Thanks for joining us for another iteration of author interviews with Safe Haven. Today I am joined by VB Lacey, who has written quite a few different fantasy romance books. VB, do you want to? Vanessa is also the way I'm going to refer to you. Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Vanessa BB Lacey. I am a new adult fantasy romance author. I started out a couple years ago independently publishing, and now I'm about to publish my fourth book.
Awesome. Kind of in your can you share what the inspiration is behind your latest book and what kind of sparked the initial idea?
Yeah, my most recent release was in November 2024, and it's called In the Wake of the Wicked. And it initially started out as a Wizard of Oz retelling because I was trying to think of things that hadn't I didn't think had been touched on a ton. You get a lot of fairy tale retellings, but I hadn't heard of a lot of Wizard of Oz retellings in the fantasy romance genre. And then that slowly morphed into Wicked because I'm a huge Wicked fan. I can't remember if you've seen Wicked.
I'm a huge theater kid, so
Okay.
yes.
Some people are like really into it, and some people, saw the movie and they liked it. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I saw the musical like 15 years ago, it's just a core memory. I think a lot of that too is because I saw it with my dad, and it was like something that we kind of bonded over. And then we saw it a lot together. And I think he was like, okay, I'm sick of this, but you, because you're my daughter. And so that's so close to my heart. And I've loved the musical. I mean, obviously I was super excited for the movie, but I've loved the musical for, 15, 20 years. And so I can't remember how I had the idea, but I ended up working in the idea of magical trials into the mix. So then the Wicked meets Hunger Games was born. And so that's what kind of sparked the initial idea.
That's awesome. Um, did you find that are you a planner or a plotter when you a pantser
Um,
or a planner? I don't. Do you plan
Cancer,
your reads or do
water.
you yeah, plotter, pantser? I don't know.
I started off as a pantser when I first started writing in 2022 because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I mean, I've always loved writing, but not structured. Like I didn't know what structured writing looked like. So I was a pantser for sure. And then I have slowly morphed. Now I'm like a full-on plotter. I mean, I have like a 20,000 word document for this current book that I'm drafting that's just plotting. And I'd never done that before. So full-on plotter now.
So, did you find with In the Wake of the Wicked that your idea kind of evolved as you plotted it out or as the story wrote itself or
So In the Wake of the Wicked was when I started slowly converting into a plotter. So probably the first, I don't know, maybe 40% was I just did it on the fly. I was like, I don't know what's about to happen. I just made it up. And then I kind of got stuck. And that's when I decided I'll try plotting. Everybody talks about it. Everybody says it's great. I'll try. So then I plotted out pretty heavily the remaining chapters, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I get why people do this now. So then it flowed very easily once I plotted it. Um, I don't know if the trajectory changed that much. I mean, I kind of had an image of, I guess the ending had always been somewhat murky to me, and so I got there eventually. But a lot of people go into it knowing what the ending is going to be, and I didn't really know. I just knew the journey along the way, and the ending actually drastically changed from what it was, like the beta version versus the final version,
oh wow.
completely different ending. So it did change a lot, yeah.
So you mentioned that the plotting helped you kind of get over a creative block. Do you have other strategies for overcoming creative blocks in writing?
I've been pretty lucky that I feel like I don't get them super often. Um, Sometimes all it takes is me just like watching a new TV show or even an old like one that I love, watching something somewhat in the genre, so somewhat fantasy and somewhat romance themed. Sometimes just doing that for a couple of nights instead of writing and just taking a break, and then I feel re-energized. I don't know if it's just because I'm like visually seeing kind of the fantasy elements flow together, and I'm like, oh, I could take this and do this. But Yeah, just watching TV shows or movies or something often helps me.
Mhm. Are you a full-time writer? Do you have a an additional responsibilities and job?
Yeah, I have a day job. I work like 8 to 5 office job, so it's a lot.
How do you find yourself balancing like your real life responsibilities with writing? Not that that's not real life, but
That's the million-dollar question. I still don't really know. I mean, I feel like with anybody who works full time plus writing, I mean, writing has become full time too. Maybe in the beginning it wasn't quite as much, especially before I released my debut. The difference between that and now is like night and day because back then I only had to market one book and I was still trying to find my audience and I wasn't having to like I wasn't dealing with ads and dealing with like more things that I've gotten into now. And now it's like, okay, I'm marketing 4 books. I'm drafting 2. I have a day job. I have to market. Like it's a lot. I'm very fortunate. My day job, they know that I'm a writer and they really support that. And they've actually allotted me a few hours a week to write, like
oh,
while I'm at the job. So that's been awesome. But I still come home and pretty much cook dinner and then write until or do admin or whatever. So
yeah.
it's basically like 2 full-time jobs. I'm just working from 8 to 10 every day.
So is that kind of your typical day? You write after work, not you're not like a wake up at 5 a.m. and start writing.
No, I tried. So literally last week, I set my alarm like an hour and a half early, and I did get up I got up multiple days in a row, and I got a lot done. And I was like, this is so productive. I'm going to keep doing this. And then I was like, I don't know. I'm not a morning person. I should try again. I should keep trying. It takes like what is it, 3 weeks to form a habit or something. So I fell off the rails after like 3 days. I need to try because I did feel so productive, but I just cannot get up in the morning.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Um, do you find that if you're in the middle of your workday and you have an idea, is it really hard to like do you have to like pause and like write notes to yourself and like kind of like how do you
Yeah, I have a lot of notes on my phone. Like I'll have a note in my phone for every book that I'm either drafting or like that's part of the series that's coming up or whatever. And I'll just go in and jot it down really fast. Or if I see things, like I'll take screenshots. If it's something visual, I can take a screenshot and save it for later kind of thing. But um, yeah, I don't have to like write out full scenes and full like dialogue things. Sometimes it'll just be an idea that I look back on later and I'm like, oh crap, I don't even know what that meant. I just write, like a single sentence of whatever was going through my head and then I lose it.
what led you to want to write?
I've always wanted to write. I think my mom tells me that I was like 6 when I told her that I wanted to be an author. Um, who knows what I thought that meant back then, but I did write a lot as a kid. Like in 4th grade, I think I spent all school year writing my first book. It was like a 150 or something page, fantasy magical book that I wrote and things like that I've just done all throughout my childhood. And then I kind of not forgot about it, but I feel like when you get into high school and college, you're so busy with your social life, trying to build a social life, trying to build a future, and like you have assignments that you have to do that kind of suck the joy sometimes out of reading and writing because you have to do it for a grade.
Mhm.
So I stopped thinking about it, stopped thinking about being an author because I didn't think it was a viable option until probably COVID or so. And that's when I got involved in Bookstagram and I saw that independent publishing was a thing, um, which I feel like had not become as dominant until the last maybe decade. So that was when I thought, oh, I can do this. Whereas as a kid, it was kind of a pipe dream. But
Mhm. Mhm. Um, do you have so you mentioned writing or like as early as childhood, did you always have specific genres that influenced your writing style or that shaped your approach to writing?
yeah, I mean, it was just always fantasy for me. I think I remember my first that book that I wrote or whatever. My mom still has it.
That's
And
amazing.
I kind of want to get it from her one day.
Your next novella.
There we go. It's called Magic Unleashed. So I mean, that in and of itself is kind of the that's the genre. And it was the kind of stuff I was reading, like Rick Riordan, the Percy Jackson series, like Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. I remember having my grandma and I would go to Barnes and Noble most Wednesday nights, and we'd get hot chocolate and a cookie, and we'd sit down and read books. And I remember going through a phase where I would always get like the Egyptian or Greek mythology books. They had really cool like pop-up things, and they had stuff like that. And putting fantasy twists on it, that sort of stuff was always a lot of fun.
Yeah. So fantasy, mythology, are there other themes you find yourself returning to in your work?
Not necessarily themes like mythology, but I think you'll always find like anxiety rep, mental health rep, trauma rep, things like that in my books. Um, I definitely keep coming back to those and like how different characters would react in different, because we don't all react to anxiety and trauma in the same way,
Mhm.
and how characters would internalize them and how they work through them and how relationships like share the burdens with each other, that sort of thing. I don't know why. I just keep coming back to that. And that's what I write a lot of, especially in these two most recent releases. Well, In the Wake of the Wicked, and then the second book, which is Of the Curse of the Crown, which is coming in July. But I mean, I think anxiety touches all of our lives in some way. So it's just really prevalent. And it naturally is a theme that works itself into writing, especially if you see it all the time or you're struggling with it too.
Mhm.
That sort of
Mhm. Do you find that in order to write about that, that research plays a role in your writing?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I I think we all, like I said, have anxiety has touched us in some way. But I'm writing about things that I have not gone through, and I don't know what some type of trauma like PTSD. I don't know what some of that is like, or trauma related to injuries, or trauma related to certain types of abuse, things like that. I don't know what all of them are like,
Mhm.
and so I definitely have to do some research of how how people react. How do you handle it when people react like that? Like, what's the best way to talk to discuss things through with them, things like that.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I can't just pull that out of thin air. I have to have some sort of backing psychologically too. Like, how do people deal with that in this world, and how might I put that into a fantasy world?
Yeah. Do you do any other research in your writing?
Yeah, I research a lot before I start drafting. So when I'm setting up the world, I feel like you have to, I mean, yes, it's not our world, but it's hard not to look at it through the lens of our world. And it's not super exciting stuff. It's like what types of crops can grow in like an island environment, and like what sort of occupations might people have in a mountainous climate. So it's not like super interesting. There are some fun things to end up researching, like fighting techniques and like watching videos of that and stuff like that. But for the most part, I feel like my research is pretty boring.
Important though for the
Yes,
world though.
it's all, I think of writing as like this iceberg. Like you guys see, the tip and everything else, especially with like my elementals, Iona duology, which for anybody who doesn't know, it's based around this idea of these four immortal beings that each control a different element of nature. And so I did a lot of research on like what, now I do not remember what most of this was because this was like 3 years ago, but I did a lot of research on like what the elements have meant to past cultures. It relates a lot to their mythology, which I was surprised by, and just I also looked into how like elements and zodiac, so like personalities, and like
Mhm.
how would various elements be personified. I mean, there was so much that I did with just like trying to make these characters really feel like nature. And that's like the bottom of the iceberg, and you guys just see like the little tip. So there's a lot that goes into it.
That's amazing. Could you describe the setting? I mean, you mentioned kind of like Wicked meets the Hunger Games, but what is the setting of your latest work?
Yeah, well, so um In the Wake of the Wicked is book one of a series of interconnected standalones, and so there's going to be four of them. Um, and setting wise, I feel like that typically comes a little bit later after I've established some of what I want, like the vibe, the aesthetic to be.
Mhm.
So with this four book series, I want each of them to be based on a season. And so this first one was fall, and then the second one is summer, the third one is winter, and the fourth one is spring. And so having that helped me establish a setting because um, I really like to try to draw from the setting, or like in this case, the time of year. So like winter versus summer has different vibes, and I think that um, I can play off emotions like that. So things like if you're in the winter, or if you're in a mountainous climate, if you're in a really cold place, the wind is really cold and biting, and I can play that off of like feelings. Things might be sharper and harsher. Whereas if I'm playing off of like an island setting, like there's an island in this next release I have because it's set in the summer, so things might feel more fluid and heaty and things like that. So um, the setting I feel like can really influence the vibe of the book. So I try to match it with what I want the emotions to be.
That's really cool. Um, so it sounds like, well, I think you already answered this question, but like, is the setting really important to how you tell the story?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the setting can also really move along the plot. And you have to think about like, where are they physically? Where's the setting? How are
Mhm.
they going to get from point A to point B? If there's a journey involved, what obstacles are in their path? Whether it's physically, like they have to get over a mountain and like that's hard. So setting like that type of thing, like physical barriers, but also, yeah, I mean, the emotions I think play into it too. And that's another kind of part of the iceberg I was talking about. I feel like not everybody may pick up on that, but I hope that it's an underlying like subconscious feeling of, oh, they're in this cold place, like things are harsher and sharper and emotions are a little bit more biting, and things can be like pain is more of a sting instead of like a slow burn and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm. How do you approach your character development?
I think you might have been part of some of the conversations. I'm a big Enneagram person. I don't know if you remember that. I am huge Enneagram, and for people who don't know, the Enneagram is it's this personality system with nine different types based on your core fears and your core desires. Do you or do you know your own Enneagram? Like,
I
are you?
don't. I don't. I think I did a while ago, but I have forgotten it.
I just love it. I think it has helped me. Like, it's taken me years, but I finally like I know all nine of them to the point where like I can have a conversation with someone and I mean it has to be have some depth of conversation, not
Mhm.
just like
Mhm.
how's the weather today, but have a conversation and kind of guess what your Enneagram is just based off of the things that you seem to uh, gravitate towards, and the way that you react to certain things. And so that has helped me with writing because I like to find my characters' Enneagrams first, like their this personality that they have, because that can help you know how to manage some of the character developments and also like their relationships. There's a really helpful website called the Enneagram Institute that I use all the time when I'm writing. And it shows you like how certain types react in stressful situations, or how they react whenever they're doing really healthy, like whenever they have really healthy mental mindsets. And it shows you how they can interact with other types. And that has always helped me with character development because like having a good idea of how they would instinctively react to something. It's different than me. I'm a type 6, and I'm not going to react to something the same way a type 8 is going to react. Same with your characters. They're not all going to react the same way. So that's the Enneagram. I use it a lot to help with character development and like how will they handle these conflicts that they come across.
Can they still surprise you when you have that kind of like still innate understanding of who they are at the core? Can your characters still surprise you when you're writing? Or?
Oh yeah, they've definitely surprised me. I mean, and that just shapes like their core fears and desires for
Hmm.
me. But the rest can be very fluid. I mean, you're not going to have like a type 3. You can have two type 3s that have completely different personalities. They
Hmm.
have same like core desires, but very different personalities. So that they're always doing whatever they want. Like as long as I'm keeping it true to what I think their end goal is, like they can get there however they want. And sometimes, yeah, I can. Sometimes somebody will say something, and in my head, I'm like, that sounds like something that so and so would have said. And so I kind of have to work through like, why did I think they would say it? Like, who's gonna initiate this part of the conversation? So sometimes I have to work through like, there's so many voices going on in your head at all times that you're like, I don't know who's talking.
While you were writing any of your books, did you experience any challenges and how did you navigate them?
Yeah, I think the most challenging to write, period, has been In the Wake of the Wicked. And I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I was still coming off of my debut duology. So I had been in the Elementals of Iona for, let's see, I started drafting that in May of 2022, and then I published book two in April of 2024. So that was almost 2 years of like being in that world.
Mhm.
And it was my first book, it was my first set of characters. And so leaving them was hard and like trying to write a whole new storyline with and saying goodbye to those characters while I was still having to market for the next book. Like I was still very much in this elementals world and I was trying to write something new. And I think that was hard. It was almost like an emotional, like I was so connected to this duology, and I feel like I'm not connected to this standalone. And it took a while. I think I ended up having to stop, took a pretty long break. And I eventually just ended up rereading. I don't remember how much. I mean, it was probably a good 100,000 words, which is a huge chunk.
Mhm.
And I just felt so disconnected the whole time. And then I finally stopped. I reread all of it and then started taking notes as I went of like, who these characters were and like their different quirks and oh, that sounds like something like I would say. That sounds like something my husband would say, like finding ways to relate to them on a personal level. And then when I dove back in, I finally got it. Like it clicked. And then it became one of my favorite things I've ever written. So it just took a while to get over the whole like this isn't it's not my duology anymore. And I'm sure it'll happen again once I'm done with this world.
What do you hope your readers take away from your books?
Um, I know, so I talked a little bit earlier about anxiety, like we were talking about anxiety and that sort of thing. I think what I would want people to take away is this idea of characters, them all, they're flawed, like they have things they have to work through, they have internal or external conflicts that they're having to face, just like we all do. And being able to watch them kind of evolve and go through that, giving you like seeing that these people have brokenness, like they are broken in some ways, but that they're still able to piece themselves back together.
Mhm.
And I don't think that one thing I really try to do is that it is not romance that will do that for you. Like I think I love reading about romance, and sometimes yes, that is the relationship that will pull you through, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a mother, a brother, a family member. Sometimes it's a best friend. Sometimes it's just yourself. And I want people to realize that if they can read about these characters who can pull themselves out of darkness, then they can do it too.
Lovely. Um, so I'm going to kind of pivot and ask you a fun question. It's my favorite question.
Oh boy.
If you could spend a day with any one of your characters, who would it be and what would you do?
Um, Gosh, what would we do? I don't really know. I know, I wish I could say all of the elementals because they like are a bundle. And I just think it'd be fun to see. I've just always been so fascinated with like na elements of nature, like wielding them, magic with elements, which is why that's what I chose to write my debut series on. Um, but if I had to pick one of them, I think I'd pick Aiden, who is the fire elemental in the duology, and that's just because I gave him like all of my humor, and I think we'd have a good time. He is he is very much the like that's what she said, and I if anybody knows me, like I love a good dirty joke. And I think we can have a lot of fun. And also, I'm not very like he got the I gave him my humor, but I also gave him he doesn't really care what other people think. I very much care, and I don't like embarrassing myself. So I feel like he would just be like, screw it, like you're gonna get over that. And so we do something to make me get over it.
What in what is it called? Enneagram?
Enneagram.
Yeah, what Enneagram is Aiden?
He's a seven, and or no, he's an eight, and I'm a six.
Ah,
So the sixes are very much like security oriented, which I mean, that kind of tracks with like not wanting to put yourself out there or embarrass yourself. You need security, whether that's like financial security but he is an eight wing seven. So your wing is like the number on either side of you that you
uh-huh.
relate to. I'm a six wing seven, and he's an eight wing seven. So I think that's where we kind of cross. But an eight is called the challenger. So I
Mm.
mean, very different from the security oriented me, who is like, I don't want to challenge anything. So that we're different, but I think we both share. The seven is like the spontaneous fun, you want to find fulfillment side of you. So I think that would be fun.
It's amazing. I love that. Um, so what is next for you? What's you mentioned your upcoming project releasing in July. What else is kind of what tell us more about that? What else is going on in the world of VB Lacey?
Well, this series, it's a series of interconnected standalones, so they all will stand, on their own, like they have their own plot. They share the same world and some of the same characters who make different cameo appearances, but they can all be read independently. So this one that's coming out, the first one was In the Wake of the Wicked. It came out in the fall, November. And that one was like a Wicked meets the Hunger Games. And that was originally just supposed to be a standalone, and I was going to start something new. But the Viridian Empire series, there was so much world building. Like, I spent so much time crafting this world and all these, there's six different magic types from six different provinces and all this. And I was like halfway through drafting and I was like, am I really just going to waste this on one book? Like, I need a whole series. But I knew I wasn't going to turn that one book into a series. So that's when I decided to do the interconnected standalones because this world is just so rich and there's so much more that I wanted to do with it. And so now I can do that with a bunch of different stories. So the second book, oh, and I'd also had this idea to make every book inspired by things that I loved growing up. So Wicked and Hunger Games was this first one. The second one of The Curse of the Crown that's coming out in July is Princess Diaries 2 meets King Midas, which takes me back to my Greek mythology, as a child, loved it. So it takes me back to that a little bit. So that's coming out in July. And then there's going to be two more books, books three and four, which I'm not saying what they're based on yet, but they are all based on things that I loved either growing up or have started to love, within the last 10 years or so, paired with some sort of fantasy element. Because Princess Diaries 2, very nostalgic, not fantasy. But then when you can make it fantasy, you just combine it with some Greek mythology. There you go. So things like that. So it's all stuff that I've loved, that I've drawn inspiration from growing up, and I'm really excited to be able to share more of those. I hope I'm planning on it being finished next year. So
That's amazing. I'm really excited you stayed in Viridia because I think at least in The Wake of the Wicked, there were some phenomenal characters in that book, and I'm excited that like we're gonna get to see some of them again, at least in the second book. I don't know about the third and the fourth, but
oh yeah, everyone's favorite characters coming up,
um,
and
so
he's writing his own book.
I am very excited for your next release, and thank you so much for joining us today, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.